crisis and a hemorrhage in confidence in the Eurozone. A clear solution seems a long way off as debt and default threaten even the core economies. Over the next 3 weeks, we'll be speaking to experts to find out how different countries could cope and should cope through economic hardship in our special series on the Eurozone crisis. Indonesia's trade minister is known for having an unusually global mindset. And he needs to, as he's also chairman of the country's Board of Investments. He's traveled around the world to pull in funding at a time of economic fragility in much of the developed world. Some of that fragility may dent Asia's prospects, but Gita Wirjawan believes much of the growth story is still in Asia. Eurozone, a crisis of capitalism or a crisis of leadership?
Oh, that's a tough one. Well, we know that there's been monetary union, there's been customs union, there's been political union, there's been fiscal union, but at times there's, inability of some economies or countries to adhere to the fiscal pact. That makes it difficult. And, the difficulty with a common currency is that you don't have any ability to devalue your currency as to make your economy more competitive. That's embedded within the system.
Why didn't they not see this coming when they set up the union, that fiscal union without governmental union is a sham?
Well, I wouldn't go that far. I think this is something that the Europeans, I think, would have and could have seen coming. I think they're doing whatever they can to basically
even right
remedy.
now, they're still planning on a plan for bank stabilization. Are they getting the urgency of this problem?
I think they are. If you have economies such as Germany, France, and Italy, the big guys within the union getting together, and it's not that they haven't worked hard on it the last year or two. I think they've spent more hours than ever, which I think speaks of their commitment to make sure that this remains intact. And we're hopeful that this will pull through in the right direction.
How much is Eurozone, the crisis in the Eurozone, eating into potential growth in Indonesia?
That will put a dent on growth. But the good news is that investments have been going up quite nicely. And the investments, they come from different places. The problem in some parts of the world is mainly fiscal. So it's not corporate. So I think the corporates, there's still a lot of corporates around the world who have very good cash balance that can be deployed for investing in places like Indonesia. Going forward, we would like to be able to continue climbing up the value chain, and that hopefully will help us in terms of getting a better economic performance.
Our 6.5% growth in GDP in 2011, how would you rate this?
I think it's pretty good. There is still room for improvement, but it is a testament to the hard work that the government and the people have been committed to in the past many years. From a fiscal standpoint, we've been able to trim debt down significantly in the last 14-15 years. Debt to GDP ratio of around 24% and likely to continue declining. And from a monetary standpoint, we've been able to effectively and efficiently manage inflation. Consumption has been a strong component, very robust, 55 to 60% of the GDP. Investments have also been a big part and still continue to be robust.
Now, Indonesia's abundance of natural resources, that can sometimes be a curse or a blessing. Now, tell me one instance in which those resources might serve as a curse to your economy.
Well, part of the curse is that we haven't done enough downstreaming of the natural resources. Not enough of it has been and is being processed. Going from bauxite to alumina, that's multiples of value creation. Going from alumina to aluminum, that's even more multiples. And unfortunately, we've just been exporting stuff like bauxite as opposed to keeping some of that, or a good chunk of that, and processing it into alumina, then on to aluminum. I think that value-added concept is something that we've got to really be a lot more serious with.
Let's look at one such policy. When you put a ban on exporting unprocessed rattan, that did not quite serve its purpose. Would you like to tell me about it?
Well, it depends on how you look at it. I think in our view it does, and it has served the purpose.
How did it do that?
The purpose was not to make enemies with anybody. The purpose was to make sure that it would get processed. The fact was that some of the producers in the country, the processing that are in charge of processing the raw materials, were not able to get the raw materials from some of the places that were producing the raw materials. Those would be Kalimantan, Sulawesi, and to some extent in Sumatra. For one or two reasons, they were not able to get the raw materials.
What were these one or two reasons?
Perhaps the payment ease. It would be a lot faster to get paid by people who were to buy it from overseas. And the other purpose was the fact that we wanted to make sure that the raw rattan would get cut in an environmentally friendly way. And the reality was, a bunch of it was not being cut and chopped off in an environmentally friendly way. And we did have the participation of different ministries on this to basically testify to some of the facts that we had to basically address. And the fact is that the exports of processed rattan products have gone up 40% in the first 5 months of the year. I think what many didn't understand is that there have been hundreds of companies that used to be involved in the producing of the materials into finished products that went bankrupt because of their sheer inability to get the resources, directly from some of the other islands. Look, we want to be balanced about it. We want to make sure that the economic pie continues to expand. We want to make sure that people involved in all parts of the value chain do get the necessary economic benefits. But in the meantime, this is the posture that the government sees as an important step to make sure that there is job creation.
Indonesia's trade minister wants investors to put more money into the country. But by imposing restrictions on trade and foreign ownership, potential investors could pull back from taking the plunge. All this has combined to give foreign investors a level of uncertainty about investing in Indonesia. When you come up with policies, as you did on rattan, did you factor that in?
Yes. And I think we should not lose sight of the facts. The facts are that investment realizations went up by 30% in the second quarter. I think it's pretty fair to assume that some of the messaging got lost in translation. From day one, we've always wanted to make sure that we could climb up the value chain. We could be, if we could be half as good as Singapore in terms of our industrialization, that would be good, as opposed to, as you had aptly pointed out, being cursed by being just a natural resource producer. I think we've got to be able to do something about it. The mining law that came out at the end of 2009 was clearly crafted, and it clearly stipulated that by the end of 2014, there has to be a significant amount of downstreaming of the minerals. The fact remains, by the early part of this year, none of that was happening. So we had to do something from a policy standpoint, and we did decide to basically impose export tax on some minerals to basically assuage the direct exportation of things as raw as possible, and to encourage people to make money but get more involved in the downstream area. Again, we're not closing the doors on minerals. We want to see more downstreaming.
How much attention do you pay to nationalist sentiment, both in the populace as well as in government?
Again, I think climbing up the value chain has nothing to do with being nationalistic. I think what people need to understand is the vested interest in maintaining the status quo of seeing Indonesia as a mere natural resource producer. It's huge. It's in the billions. I mean, our imports last year were 170 billion US dollars. Our exports were 203 billion US dollars. It's in the hundreds of billions of dollars. If you take a look at our export posture, 60% of our export is related to commodities, primary and secondary. Very different from the posture of Singapore. Everything that comes out of Singapore is pretty much processed, has a lot of value added and stuff. We want to get there. It may take us 10 to 20 years. Now imagine those guys that would have been living off the sheer ability of just getting things as raw as possible out of Indonesia. And we are trying to change that. And I think it's important to underline the point that this is not a zero-sum game. We're not trying to annihilate the natural resource, exploration at all. We're trying to expand the economic pie.
Are you concerned that given a world economy that is not in the best of health, the easy and lazy solution is to retreat back into just exporting natural resources and cutting back on value-added industry?
Yes, I think it's natural to be concerned that there may be people who may be lazy and would be seduced into retreating back to the old paradigm. But Indonesia is a youthful society, youthful population. This is what I call the Justin Bieber and the Jay-Z generation, which is hungry for change. And I think they want to see a better future. I do believe that the future of many of our kids in Indonesia will be one different from just being able to plant and mine. It will be a future filled with being able to plant, mine, process, and build, and create, and innovate.
Is that what they really want?
Yes, the young generation, and also their parents, who I think are supportive of the policies, and this is being substantiated by, I think, a pretty robust economic growth. I think these guys get it. They see Indonesia and where it's going to be in the long run. They don't take a 3-month view of Indonesia. For those that want to build factories in Indonesia, the question is always whether or not Indonesia is going to be better 5 years from today. Because, if you want to build a factory, you've got to take a 5, 10, 15-year view. And I think more and more people around the world are suggesting that it's not a bad place to invest because it's 250 million people, very strong and robust domestic consumption, 55 to 60% of the GDP, and there's $1.1 trillion worth of GDP on a PPP adjusted basis.
So what needs to be fixed most urgently?
I think it's the education. Education is an area that Indonesia needs to be a lot more proactive on. And the good news is that we've got a lot of fiscal space now. And that fiscal space is fuel for basically entailing and creating success in the future. And the other is the hard infrastructure, the hard stuff, being able to create roads, build roads, ports, airports, and power generation capabilities. Java is the most populous island in the country, and it has the benefit of having the best infrastructure by way of water, ports, airports, roads, and power generation capabilities, and also education and healthcare. But look around, there's 17,000 islands in the country. Many of these islands do need a lot of attention. I think we've got to make sure that money keeps flowing into parts of Indonesia beyond Java, and that's really not an easy job.
Well, there's severe infrastructure deficits in Indonesia. Why isn't more being done?
More is being done. The question is it enough? It's not enough.
Why isn't it enough? Why aren't you speeding it up?
I think, we want to, the tendency is to want to get everything fixed by tomorrow. But when you're dealing with a huge population, you can only progress at a certain pace that, it takes some patience. We have not had the land law for tens of years, but we finally got that out, at the end of last year. And the land law is a defining moment for any infrastructure development, because if you want to build stuff on land, you've got to make sure that there's an ability to clear the land. And this land law will unleash significant value, and we're basically at the tail end of the process of issuing the presidential decree, which will have the details necessary for the mechanism with which land will be cleared as it relates to the law.
Given these many issues, you mentioned infrastructure, bureaucracy, what, as trade minister, would you be best suited to tackle?
Within the ministry, we are basically looking at a number of things. The first is related to the human capital development. We're basically training as many people as possible within the ministry. The second is really to make sure that the principle of multilateralism stays, and that is by way of our socializing with the rest of the members of the WTO, that, the Doha round. The third is to really explore new markets as to expand our trade. As I said, trade only makes up around 50% of the GDP, within which exports make up about 26% of the GDP. I think we've got to trade with more partners and more deeply. And there are markets outside the usual that we're looking at, more proactively, and those would include the African continent, the American, the South American or Latin American and Caribbean, and the Central Asian countries and the Middle East and the subcontinent.
Do these economies, Latin American and Caribbean economies, do they see the Asian growth story as having hit a roadblock, at least for now?
It's not so much a roadblock, it's more of a mental block, because they're so used to dealing with people nearby, such as those in North America, and people familiar, such as those in Europe. They've started, I think, diversifying. Now they see a much more pressing need to diversify out of the traditional markets. They've started reaching out to Asia Pacific, China and Japan. But they're looking at ASEAN, I think, a lot more now.
As a minister, what do you sense when you speak to them is holding them back from further involvement?
It's the physical distance and the seeming lack of connectivity. But, you know, this is the 21st century where the world is supposedly flat or flatter.
How much credit would you claim for having contributed to that sense of connectivity between South and South?
You mean from a people-to-people standpoint or from a physical
all things
connectivity?
boil down to people and people. So when they meet you, they cannot meet the whole of Indonesia, but they will meet you.
Yeah. Well, they were in Indonesia to meet up with ministers from ASEAN countries. Lim Hang Kiang was there, and other ministers from ASEAN countries was there. This is just the beginning of a long journey because we're starting from a very low base. We may be seeing huge percentages of growth in the first few months or years, but you know, given the fact that we're starting from a low base, I think you know we'll be able to tell if this is a real success story. In a couple of years' time, we'll know if we're on track. But again, I think we've got to collectively get this done together.
A low base and a long journey ahead, while keeping up the impetus for change and added value. Big tasks indeed for Gita Wirjawan, just as a weak global environment could force Indonesia back into its old comfort zone, producing and consuming all on its own.